if you're at home, if you're quarantining at home, then you have the capability of diving in right now. Now's the perfect time to change your routine around food and nurturing your body. Dive into the cooking videos. Like Chef AJ has tons of cooking videos. There's just type in whole food plant-based recipe into YouTube and just dive in, and make sure that you watch the ones where they don't use any oil.
Right.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Get ready to hear from doctors, nutritionists, experts, and everyday men and women committed to creating a powerful life in mind, body, and soul through ethical food choices. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health, and I am so excited to interview today and have a conversation today with Ashley James. And I actually met Ashley and her husband probably, it's going on 8 to 10 years ago. I'm trying to remember.
It was around 2013. I think it was 2013.
Okay, so about 7 years ago, it was in Portland at an event that I was doing, and I remember, you two were so memorable, and I did so many events, and when you do that many events, a handful of people are memorable, and you and your husband were two people that I just kind of kept in the back of my mind that one day I wanted to get to know you better, and I started a Facebook group, and I saw that you joined it, and then I started searching out your information online, and lo and behold, we have so much in common, which is really a way of life and helping to raise awareness around people being healthy. So with that, Ashley, I'd love you to introduce yourself. Tell us about Learn True Health, and what's your whole mission?
Well, let's see. In my teens, I became very unhealthy. I started eating the cafeteria food. I started rebelling and eating all kinds of junk food because my mom was into eating healthy, and so I was into rebelling as a teenager. And I gave myself type 2 diabetes. I also developed chronic adrenal fatigue, chronic infections for which I needed monthly antibiotics for. When I was 19, I was told I'd never have kids by an endocrinologist. I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and infertility. I felt like a prisoner trapped in my own body, and I kept gaining weight out of control no matter how much I exercised and how much I dieted. I've been on over 40 diets, and I spent all of my 20s dieting, but continuing to gain weight because I was following, like Atkins and South Beach and Zone and you name it, I did it. I exercised my butt off, but I kept feeling more and more tired, more and more deplete. And I always felt like a failure. So I felt really like a prisoner trapped in my own body. My blood sugar also was out of control, and I was hungry all the time. It got so bad to the point where I couldn't work. This was when I was about 30, right around there. I was just so exhausted that even in the morning, I couldn't process human language. And it was very strange. I'd have to drink a lot of coffee and spend a few hours, and then I could start to understand people. So there's this level of mental fog that was so great that I didn't feel like I was human anymore. I didn't know what I'd become, but I didn't feel alive. I didn't even know if I'd reached my 40th birthday. And I found a holistic doctor who tested me and discovered that I had extreme adrenal fatigue, that my cortisol levels, when they were at their highest, was actually normal low for some people. So your lowest cortisol level when you're sleeping was my highest level. Wow. So I was very sick for many years. And right around when I was 28, Netflix started to stream documentaries. And my husband and I love documentaries. We started watching these like Forks Over Knives and Food Inc. and that kind of thing. And we started learning from these, and we decided to implement a few things we learned. Shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Shop, buy whole foods. We hadn't cut out dairy yet. We hadn't cut out meat and eggs yet. We just stopped eating all the processed food. And we also chose to switch to organic. within 1 month, my chronic infections went away and I no longer needed antibiotics. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I was able to make such a huge change to my health by simply changing what I ate. It was like a new concept to me. So I spent all of my 30s seeking health. I found naturopaths that would mentor me. I got on some whole food supplements. I shifted my diet to more natural, healthy foods. I shifted my lifestyle. And very quickly, I was able to reverse type 2 diabetes. I'm no longer diabetic. I was able to heal the chronic adrenal fatigue. I was able to reverse the infertility. I was able to reverse the polycystic ovarian syndrome. We conceived naturally our son, who's now 5 and super healthy. We totally conceived naturally. We didn't need any medical interventions for fertility. And since going whole food plant-based, I've lost 80 pounds. And that is the most success, and kept it off. And it's not coming back, like in the past, I would yo-yo. I also have had for many years liver problems, and I have been healing my liver. So I've been having really great success with a whole food plant-based diet, supplements to fill in the gaps when needed, herbs, natural medicine, looking to nature. And that's why I started the Learn to Health podcast, because I was suffering for so many years. And I went from one medical doctor to the next, and they just wanted to give me drug after drug. If I had never advocated for myself, if I had never gone out and been like a salmon, completely going against the grain, to cut out meat, to eat pounds and pounds of vegetables, to not eat processed food, to not go through the drive-through, to cut out oil and salt and sugar, and, to do things that are totally against the norm. If I had not gone, and some people think those are extremes, but if I had not done those, I would probably not be alive right now.
Well, it's interesting what you say about people think that's extreme, and yet what people will do is give their life to a doctor or some authority figure and let them totally screw it up. I mean, we're seeing that happen all over the place, and this whole situation with COVID-19, if people really dug deep into it, they would realize that a lot of what the cause of the complications happens to be are all the underlying complications of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, the whole 9 yards. And it's interesting what you're saying about reversing things, because I had a discussion with somebody recently about the whole issue of our obesity epidemic here in the United States and worldwide. And she got really upset. She goes, "You're blaming people and you're saying it's their own fault." And I said, in a lot of cases, it is their own fault. Not always.
Put in our mouth.
Exactly. But a lot of people don't want to take that responsibility. So I really love that that's a big part of your platform. And with your Learn True Health podcast, now what year did you start that?
2016. So,
okay.
So back in 2016, so it's been 4 years. It was March 2016. So we just celebrated our 4-year anniversary. But yeah, the reason why I started it is I wanted to interview a variety of holistic health experts so that I could get this information out there. Because for so many years I suffered. And then if I had had this information, I could have ended my suffering sooner, obviously. But I thought, how many people are just like me? And it turns out there's so many people just like me who they want to make the right food choices. They really do, but they've been fed the wrong information. And they want to make the right lifestyle choices. They want to take action. They just don't know. They just don't know the information. And I've had people write me and say they didn't even know what a naturopath was. They'd never heard of one. And now they're seeing one. I've had a few people actually write me and say that they were in pre-med to become MDs and they've switched and now they're going to go to Bastyr University and they're going to become naturopathic physicians.
Wow.
So that inspires me that the work that I do in the podcast, Learn to Health podcast, is opening up a whole new world of holistic medicine and showing people tools. And even if a listener knows about naturopathy or knows about certain holistic tools, there's new ones. They're like unbelievable information that I'm learning every day. And I feel so grateful to have this platform I've interviewed over 450. We've now published we're about to publish 430 episodes. And I've interviewed so many holistic experts. You've been on my show as well, which
yes,
is
I
really
have.
exciting. Yeah. And so when I started the podcast, I wasn't vegan. I wasn't whole food plant-based. But I was eating a whole foods diet, but more, I guess some people would call it paleo, but I've been gluten-free since 2011. Our family has. And part of my healing journey was to experiment with, doing an elimination diet many times and figuring out what I'm allergic to, what my body resonates with and what it doesn't resonate with. And barley, wheat, rye, and oats are foods that my body does not resonate with. I did cut out dairy years ago and rediscovered that it definitely, dairy does not agree with me. I am of the opinion now that no one should drink dairy. We could have a whole 4-hour discussion on that, but
Right.
There's so much information, and I love Dr. Barnard's book, Cheese. I had him on my podcast. It's very interesting because there's an addictive component to dairy that makes people think dairy hijacks the brain. It makes people think they need it, but it's detrimental to our health on so many levels, especially the immune system. So right now is the time we should cut out dairy. If you're still drinking dairy, we should absolutely, now is the time to cut it out, because it does harm the immune system. And so during my podcast, the first 2 years of the podcast, I kept getting experts talking about a whole food plant-based diet. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, I could never not eat meat because, and I had this little list of reasons. It's healthy, it's part of health. It's healthy. Would you get your protein from? Where would you get your healthy fats from? Don't you need to eat, fish and eggs? You have to eat eggs so I had this list of reasons. And of course I felt like a little bit of an expert since I've been on over 40 diets, and I've been using food. At that point, I'd used food to heal a lot of my chronic conditions. Not really seeing that still eating eggs and meat was actually slowing my progress.
Right.
And that it was cutting out all the flour and the sugar and the salt and the oil, which I had actually done before going whole food plant-based. And eating lots of vegetables and fruits was probably why I was healing so quickly. But then I kept getting these experts talking about eating a whole food plant-based diet. And one expert who wrote a book on clean protein, I think is the name of the book. And there's 2 authors. I interviewed both of them. And he said, one serving of legumes is, I think it was 18 grams of protein or something like that. It was something like half a cup or a cup. And I thought to myself, that much protein? I didn't know that much protein was in plants. And that's what triggered me. That interview, I started looking into it and seeing that, my gosh, there's protein in a potato. There's protein in nuts and seeds. Actually, I interviewed a raw vegan athlete named, I'll remember her name. This was early on. This is the first 50 episodes. And she has the most beautiful voice. She's from the Netherlands, but she's lived in several European countries. So she has this very beautiful accent that you can't quite pinpoint. And she is ripped. Now she's in her 60s. She looks 40 and she is ripped. She's got muscles you wouldn't believe. She looks like a greyhound, just totally ripped. Not an ounce of fat on her, totally gorgeous. And she's a pro tennis player.
Wow.
And I asked her, what does she eat? And she's like, well, every day I make this big, beautiful salad the size of, 3 times the size of my head. And I put a handful of sunflower seeds, and that's, because it's so full of protein. And I thought, there's protein in sunflower seeds? I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind, because at that point in my life, I thought you needed meat to have energy.
Well, it's, I have to say, with the whole protein thing, right now, it's actually the day that we're having this conversation, the day that this is being recorded, is the day that President Trump is going to mandate that factory farms open back up. With this whole COVID thing, they found a lot of people were, tested positive for COVID-19. They had quite a few people die that were in factory farms. And so, a lot of us plant-based eaters were going, oh, hallelujah, thank you. And And the meat eaters are like, oh, this is the worst thing that could happen. It's like, what are we going to eat? The food supply is being cut out. And what Trump said was, we're doing this so people get their protein. And it's like, you've got to be kidding. And right now there's a big petition going on. And you're right. Most people don't realize how much protein there is in plant-based food. And so I love the fact that you've really focused on that to educate people and to educate yourself. Because actually, when I started my plant-based journey, it was September of 2018. I was thinking about it this morning on my morning run. And that's one thing I do quite frequently is I go on morning runs, and I have the energy to do so because of plant-based eating. And I was just thinking about, the whole issue of people often ask, why is it that, where do you get your protein? But I was thinking about when I first started, you were one of the people that I found your podcast. And I was so excited because I didn't realize that you had such a wealth of knowledge. But again, you had interviewed, by that point, probably well over 200 people. And I just delved in and started researching you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's one of the leading experts. This is so awesome. Yeah. So where do you see with what's going on with COVID right now, and people, I think, becoming more aware of the whole connection between what they eat and their health and the underlying causes that cause complication? Where do you see the whole plant-based movement going?
When I started my podcast, I had never heard of whole food plant-based, and it was I had very few guests. So I reach out to a lot of people to be on the show, but a lot of people reach out to me, and I've connected to a lot of PR companies that have doctors that are looking to be on podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get a variety, because I do reach out to, I like to go on Amazon and look at all the top rated sellers and try to get them on. And I was just looking at health in general. I had very few whole food plant-based authors or experts or doctors at the beginning. And now what's interesting is now it's 4 years later, I think it's starting to be so common, it's
Mm-hmm.
so popular, that even doctors who they're not necessarily whole food plant-based doctors that I interview will start off by saying something like, when I ask about, what do you recommend, or what do you eat, or what do you recommend people eat? They will say, if you choose to eat meat, they'll always start off their little talk with, well, if you choose to, then da 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 da. And I thought that was really interesting, that the people's language, the doctors and holistic practitioners, their language has changed over the last 4 years, that every time someone brings up dairy or eggs or meat or fish, they always start off by saying, well, if you choose to eat that way, whereas 4 years ago they didn't. So I think it's really interesting that it's coming more into the consciousness of holistic practitioners, which is where the education really needs to start.
Absolutely.
The root word of doctor is docere, which means teacher.
Hmm.
And we look to our doctors to teach us, not like medical doctors that are just going to, with a prescription pad in their hand, but
Right.
like when you go to a naturopath, when you go to a functional medicine practitioner, when you go to your chiropractors have so many more hours of nutritional education, and they have that face-to-face time with you. So when you go to someone on your health team, that is the best opportunity when you're face-to-face. That's the best opportunity to start to receive this information. And so I think how we're going to get this information out there is really by educating the educators, by educating the holistic health professionals. About
Right.
20% of my listeners on my show are holistic health professionals. And so that's exciting, knowing that we're educating the people that are getting it out there. But what we can do as individuals is we can educate our health practitioners.
Right,
So when we go to our chiropractor, our acupuncturist, our massage therapist, our doctor, our OBGYN, we can tell them this information, give them our favorite interview or tell them about our favorite book. One of my favorite books is Proteinaholic. I love his story. I love Dr. Garth Davis' story that he was a weight loss doctor that did weight loss surgeries, and he started to gain weight out of control, even though he was following his own diet. And he had to eat humble pie and go back to the drawing board and figure out what was going on. And then he got cholesterol deposits in his eyes, something that doesn't happen until someone's normally like 60 or 70 or 80 after having high cholesterol their whole life. And he was 35 years old. And of course, he's a surgeon. He needs his eyesight. And that's when he really took things seriously. And he adapted a whole food plant-based diet. And it was rocky for him. Some people go cold turkey. My husband woke up January 1st, 2 or 3 years ago. I'm gonna have to ask him. It's kind of all, I've forgotten, but I remember it was like right after New Year's, my husband woke up and he said to me, I am never eating meat again. He just, out of the blue. And I thought, wow, that's going to be a big change because I do all the cooking in the house. And I would started to eat less and less meat because of all the information. I'm a slow adopter when it's come to going whole food plant-based, but he was overnight. He said, I am never eating meat again. And that was after I had just done another whole food plant-based interview and shared it with him. And he was just like, I'm done. He just had to hear enough information. It was actually my interview with Robin Openshaw about the frequency of meat. That
interesting.
The scientists have this tool that they can hook up to your body and measure the hertz, your energy frequency. Those who are on their deathbed are 40 hertz. Those who have cancer are 60 hertz. Those who are healthy, like yourself running marathons, are 120 hertz. There's a big difference between someone who's healthy and someone who's dying. And as people are dying, the hertz, go down and down and down. Right. And when they're dead, they're, almost at zero. And she said, like fruits and vegetables, they could be like 400 hertz. They're, food that's alive can be really high in hertz. She says, guess how many hertz is pork sausage? And I remember I had just fed my son some, it was like free range, organic pork sausage, the healthiest, cleanest pork sausage you could get. I just fed him some of that for breakfast. And she said, it's 6 hertz. She said, meat that is dead on your plate it's dead. There's no energy in it. And she said, just from an energetic standpoint, if you're trying to raise your hertz, if you're healthy people have high hertz, dead, dying people have low hertz. And it's math. If you're putting dead food into you that have low hertz, how are you going to raise your vibration? And she just said that there's this big correlation between the hertz of food that you ingest and your physical hertz. And I shared that with my husband, and that was the last straw. That's all he needed to hear. And, he had heard so much other information about the meat industry, which is what you're talking about. There's been a lot of cover-ups around the safety of meat, around that they're finding human DNA, traces of human DNA in meat. And it's like, what's that about? Hot dogs and hamburgers, that there could be over 100, the DNA of 100 different cows in a hamburger, that kind of thing. That even though that there's tumors in the meat, there's pus in the meat, that in the meat industry and dairy industry, they allow a safe amount of pus, blood, and cancer cells, cancer tumors to be butchered in or processed in and allowed in to the food. So, I've seen butchers share this information. We'll cut into an animal and we'll find tumors, we'll find pus, and that's something that is regularly put in processed meat. He had that information that he had just processed. And then I came with the hertz thing and he says, I'm done. So day 4 of eating whole food plant-based for my husband, he turns to me and he takes a bite of his food and he goes, this is so delicious. He goes, if you had told me that this would have tasted this good, I would have quit meat years ago. And my husband was he was on a carnivore diet.
I get that.
He only ate meat. I'd never seen him eat a vegetable in his life. He only ate meat. It would have eggs and meat, and he'd never, ever eat vegetables. And so for him to go 100% cold turkey or whatever the
Well,
version of that is.
after the story you just told about the butchers, if anybody can eat meat after that, God bless them. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, that, yeah, for me, I haven't had a bite of meat in coming up on 2 years, and I have no desire to. And if I had any desire, you just took it away. And it's so interesting because with the whole topic of hurts, when you think of the pain and suffering and agony and distress that animals go through, when they're in the factory farms and then to get to our plates. And I remember talking to somebody in the pet industry about this whole issue, and I really was shocked when she said what a meat eater she is, and she said that whole thing about factory farms is made up, and I'm like, no, it really isn't. And it really it actually gave me a different perspective of who she is, because I thought, here you're an advocate for animals and you're saying that this is made up. And I think now what a blessing it is that the covers have been pulled and we're really seeing what's going on in factory farms, and that the workers, as they interview the workers, that they're actually revealing so much of the pain and suffering that does go on, not just for the animals, but for them also. Now, I know that in your business, you actually coach people in, I believe it's starting health businesses. Tell us about your business.
Oh, right. Actually, I have helped people around their business for many years, even before doing the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I seem to have gravitated towards helping people, helping holistic health coaches. So that's one thing I do. It's amazing. I guess my audience has become so awake and aware about health that many of them ended up becoming health coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I myself went through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition's online health coaching program. It's a great program. It really does lean towards the whole food plant-based. Although what I like about it is they teach 100 dietary theories, and the thing is, you can eat whole food plant-based isn't one way of eating. You
Right.
could actually be keto if you wanted to. You could be there's so many different ways you could eat within a whole food plant-based diet. You could choose to be grain-free. You could choose to be autoimmune. There's like a whole autoimmune protocol for people who need to avoid certain kinds of foods like nightshades and legumes. So whole food plant-based means that the food is not processed, or it's minimally processed, that we're getting all of our nutrients from plants. That gives you like 2,000 choices to put on your plate. It gives you so many choices. When I used to, I love cooking. I'd always think of the meat as the centerpiece, and then what am I going to garnish it with?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of opened up this whole world, because there's no like center point. There's no like, oh, I'm making the salmon. Well, what goes with salmon? Now it's kind of like I just open up my fridge, and it's like I have so many choices. So sometimes I'll go, okay, well, cabbage is going to be the center point. What am I going to do with the cabbage? Or I'll just start grabbing random things out of the fridge, and I'll make a big stir fry. Of course, you don't need oil to do that. You can do oil-free stir fries. And then I'll choose, and Instant Pot is your best friend. So easily I can make potatoes or quinoa. Quinoa is not a grain, it's a seed. And you can make quinoa different ways. You can make it into like a porridge. You can make it into like a mash. You can make it into a very dry grain, almost like a green texture. You can make brown rice. You can make lentils or beans. So there's so many ways that you can just very quickly choose super healthy meals. And then I also love to teach people how to cook once and eat 3 times. So cook once and then make it so that you can have several meals out of that. So really, you don't need to be in the kitchen every day. You can cook once every 3 days or once every 5 days if you get really creative.
For me, I actually discovered that I enjoy cooking, because I actually, I would say 98% of my adult life, I didn't cook. And when I discovered plant-based eating, it was kind of like either I cook for myself or I starve. And I didn't want to just eat, raw. That wasn't my deal. I tried that a few years ago. And what I found was, as I experimented with recipes, it actually came out really good. It's hard to mess up plant-based cooking. I mean, you have to really work at it. I think I've only had one really bad meal, and I don't even know what it was, but it just didn't work. But everything else has worked, and people compliment me on my cooking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like anything for applause. So go ahead, applaud me, and I'll cook for you. But yeah, it's actually kind of nice because you can get very creative, and I do the same thing. I go into my refrigerator. It's like, okay, I call it Kathleen's surprise. Just throw it all in the crock pot. I haven't got to an Instapot yet. It's like for some reason, yeah, I haven't done that, and I know horror.
There's a whole world opening up for you. I have 3 Instapots.
Well, my birthday is coming up, so I think that I might be getting
you
one
need
for my birthday.
You
Yeah.
need to get 2 of them.
Okay.
They are so great. They're so great. So in one Instapot, you could steam vegetables. In another one, you can make potatoes. And in a third one, you can make some kind of bean or lentil.
Mm-hmm.
They're really, really wonderful. I mean, you don't have to own 3. I know I'm a bit, I went a bit overboard. But it's because I'm always, when I use up my 2 and then I'm like, oh, I wish I could be making this right now. I have to wait for the Instapot to be done. So I just got a 3rd one. You can buy them used. If you're looking to save, but I noticed that people sell them for almost what they cost anyway. When they're on sale at Costco, like they're $60. Usually they're $90. So grab them when they're on sale. But yes, I love Instant Pot. A friend of mine, a really dear friend of mine, was diagnosed with a heart condition, heart disease, back in the last summer. And she had been healing Epstein-Barr virus. So she was eating very healthy for years. She was taking herbs and doing everything she could to heal her body and overcome Epstein-Barr virus. And she thought that her heart palpitations, her tightness in her chest, the angina she was having, the shortness of breath when she walked, she thought that was part of her Epstein-Barr until she came over to my house right after her appointment when she discovered that she had heart disease. She's a mom of 3 boys. She's in her 40s. She was maybe like, 240 pounds, something like that. And she was very active. With 3 boys, right? So she was very active, and she did all of the home cooking. She very rarely ate out. And she was eating kind of like a paleo, lots of vegetables, meat that they bought from a local farmer. They were doing everything they thought was really, really healthy. She came over and she was just told by her practitioner she had to go whole food plant-based, no oil, no salt, no sugar. And she says, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I said, you come over and we'll decompress together. And I had just made fresh rolls. So filled them with all kinds of vegetables, made a big wrap out of it. You can do it with collard greens, like they're big leaves. And then you can put like a homemade hummus in it and some avocado slices. And then you can shred some cabbage and some basil and shred some carrot and cut up some celery or some cucumber and wrap it all together and then make some kind of dip, like a peanut sauce dip. I served it to her and we sat and talked about it. And she was just like, oh, this is so yummy. She goes, I could feed this to my kids. My kids would eat this. And so I didn't realize it, but by serving her the fresh rolls, it inspired her to go for it because she was really overwhelmed. Like, oh my gosh, how I can't get my kids to eat whole food plant-based. This is going to be a big transition. Well, she went home and she said to the family, you guys can eat whatever you want, but I'm healing my body. I'm cooking whole food plant-based. You can eat my food or you can, do whatever you want, but I'm good. This is how I'm cooking from now on. And so she started cooking whole food plant-based. Like I was coaching her every day. I would take pictures of what I cooked and because I was already whole food plant-based and I'd share recipes with her and share videos with her. I introduced her to my favorite whole food plant-based chefs, like Chef AJ, who I've had on the show a few times. And she kept texting me back pictures of what she invented. And so we kept going back and forth. Within weeks, something really interesting happened. As she's walking down the sidewalk with her walking partner, one of her neighbor said, you're walking faster. She also noticed she didn't have any shortness of breath or heart pain. And she didn't really believe that she was walking faster. She thought maybe her walking partner was just walking slower that day. But then a few weeks later, she's walking with her kids, and her three kids, or three boys, which ages 9 to 13, very, very active boys, said, Mom, slow down. We can't keep up with
Wow.
you. And she turned around and realized that she was walking faster than her three boys, and she burst into tears. And she couldn't believe that within weeks of starting a whole food plant-based diet, and she was, again, already eating very clean. She was already eating gluten-free. She was already eating no processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
She had just cut out dairy and meat and ate even more vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And those changes, and cut out oil. And those changes were enough for her to, within weeks, have no angina, no shortness of breath, and have more physical energy and walk faster. So she spent the whole summer talking to me about how could she get her parents and her mother-in-law to eat this way too, because of their health conditions. And she was worried that they'd never adapt to this way of eating, because they were really, really, sold on that meat is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept just sharing resources with her to share with them. And she got them to watch some documentaries, like Forks Over Knives and The Game Changers, and just shared some articles, shared some interviews. And her dad and her mom decided to go whole food plant-based. Her dad needed heart surgery. And the cardiologist and the nutritionist that worked with the cardiologist all wanted him to continue eating meat. And he said, no, I won't. Within weeks of going whole food plant-based, he noticed that his endurance was through the roof. He was the person who healed and recovered the fastest out of everyone in his physical therapy group. The physical therapist noticed he had more endurance than ever before. So he was very happy about that. And then what was really interesting is her mom, who had arthritis and was on medication with arthritis, the pain of the arthritis, within 6 weeks of going whole food plant-based, her arthritis pain was 100% gone.
That's
100%
amazing.
gone.
That's
Stiffness was
amazing.
gone. Well, then we couldn't believe it, but her mother-in-law, who had been diabetic for many years and really addicted to sugar, decided to kick the sugar and go whole food plant-based and do intermittent fasting and do some days of water-only fasting. And she has dropped weight. She has, her doctor took her off of insulin. Her doctor took her off of her metformin. Within weeks, she's been able to get her, totally reverse things. And it's been, they've been on it. And that was, again, over the summer. So it has been over 6 months. And they're doing great. Yeah.
Now you mentioned she was 240 pounds. Did she drop any weight?
Lost weight. Yeah, she lost weight.
Yeah.
She is now at the weight that she was before her kids.
That's amazing. Well, that actually is a beautiful segue into the next question I have. But before I ask you the question, how do people get in touch with you?
They can go to learntruehealth.com. They can search Learn True Health in any of their podcast directories.
Great.
They can join the Learn True Health Facebook group.
Okay.
Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
And I'll be putting that all in the show notes. But the next question is, for somebody just starting out, they've heard that plant-based eating can be a good thing. They're hearing all these amazing stories that you're telling. They've done their research. And that's really what got me hooked in when I did my research. And it was almost too good to be true. And I thought it's like the magic pill that you don't have to take the pill for. How would somebody start if they're really serious? They said, okay, enough is enough. I don't want to be one of those that deals with complications because of COVID-19. I want to be as healthy as possible. I want to build my immune system. What would your recommendation be to somebody who is right on the fence and they're saying, okay, I'm ready? What would you recommend?
So I like that you bring up the COVID-19, when looking at a diet to heal the body, because I've actually done some interviews with holistic health experts, with doctors in the last few weeks about what is the best diet for supporting the immune system. And they unanimously said a whole food plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not whole food plant-based doctors. These aren't doctors that, it was unexpected, but I was really excited because these doctors are grounded in science. Dairy harms the immune system. Sugar harms the immune system. Processed food harms the immune system. Foods that are not organic. And my example being, I had chronic infections. My immune system was so shot that I was constantly on antibiotics. And all I did was cut out processed foods and go organic. and my infections went away.
Mm.
So going organic is big. Cutting out processed foods is big. I love Dr. Joel Furman, who I've had on the show, has a book about supporting the immune system with food. The immune system needs antioxidants. The immune system needs polyphenols. The immune system needs vitamins and minerals. The immune system needs these nutrients. You don't get these nutrients from meat. You get them from plants. So the more meat is on your plate, the more dairy is on your plate, the more flour is on your plate in the form of bread and pasta and pastries and cookies and muffins, the more sugar is on your plate, and there's hidden processed sugar in so many things. The more that is taking up your plate, just imagine if you're like half your plate is that, you're cutting your immune system's effectiveness by that amount of percentage. So do you want immune system working at 50%, or do you want immune system working at 100%? And if you fill your plate up 100% with foods that fuel it, nuts, seeds, legumes, beans, some people can handle whole grains like brown rice, and over 2,000 fruits and vegetables. There's so many you have to choose from. Fill your plate up with a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables every day. Eat a minimum of 2 pounds of vegetables. That I know it sounds like a lot, but it's actually really easy.
Well, I love how your face lights up when you say, and there's so many fruits and vegetables, 2,000, and you just light up. It's like, it's so evident what a plant-based lifestyle has done for you. And, so I appreciate that.
There's so many choices because I remember going, what am I going to eat? When it's like, you're taking away everything. Like, what am I going to eat? Oh my gosh, I did. Just crowd out your plate. Don't think about what you're missing. Think about what you get to have.
Exactly.
Eat tons of fruits and vegetables. Now, to answer your question about transitioning, the first few weeks can either be really hard or really fun. And it depends on your mindset. I got really excited and I dove in. And this is a perfect opportunity if you're at home, if you're quarantining at home, then you have the capability of diving in right now. Now's the perfect time to change your routine around food and nurturing your body. Dive into the cooking videos. Like Chef AJ has tons of cooking videos. There's just type in whole food plant-based recipe into YouTube and just dive in, and make sure that you watch the ones where they don't use any oil.
Right.
Dive in. You can learn so many videos, or you can learn so many recipes. Know that the transition, it's like you're learning. It's like you're a child again. You're learning food for the first time, right? You have this whole world opened up to you, and it's fun. Make it fun. If it's stressful, then take your time. Some people, like Dr. Garth Davis and myself, we didn't go whole food plant-based overnight. He talks about in his book, he'd go a few days without meat, right? He'd go maybe a few meals without meat. And then he went longer and longer and longer and longer. And then all of a sudden he realized he wasn't eating meat at all. So do what works for you. Are you the kind of person like my husband who needs to go cold turkey? Because that's his personality. He is an all or nothing person.
Me too.
And for me, sometimes I'm an all or nothing person, but for me, this was a transition that I said, I just gave myself, I guess I'm the kind of person that if I tell myself I can't have anything ever, then there's a little part of me that will rebel.
Right.
And so what I said to myself was, you know what, I'm going to eat a plant-based meal. I'm going to do one meal at a time. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other. Like I was an alcoholic sobering up. I'm just going to take this one day at a time. And I'm not going to make any promises for tomorrow, but I'm just going to see if I can do it today. Because if I told myself I'd never get to have meat again, I might have quit, right? So that was, I know my personality. So I just did it one day at a time, and it was less and less and less meat. Of course, I stopped buying it. I stopped bringing it into the house. That made it easy. So stop buying it. Stop buying meat. Stop bringing it to the house. A great challenge: every time you go to the grocery store, buy a vegetable you've never looks like an alien to you. You don't know the name of it. You have to look and see what the name is so that you can look up recipes for it. Buy something you've never eaten or you've never cooked. and try a new fruit or vegetable every time you go to the grocery store. And it's especially if you have kids, it's really fun because you can say, hey, what's this? Let's go find out what this tastes like.
Right.
Does it taste good raw? Does it taste good steamed? Does it taste good sauteed or baked? What is this? And that's how you're going to discover this whole world of things that you didn't even know you liked or don't like, but you're gonna discover it. It's this new world. Some people find that they get really gassy, and that's okay. Your digestive system has a microbiome that is not yet used to this. So soak your nuts and soak your beans and lentils, soak them overnight and drain them and wash off the water. That helps to lessen the gas. Eat smaller meals more often. Eat a variety of raw food as well if you can. If you don't have like IBS, raw food that is organic, that is it's been like from local farmers if you can, because there are that's where we get the microbiome. So that's where we get, so you hear about probiotics. Well, that's where we get the probiotic. That's where we get the healthy bacteria is from the raw foods. So it's really interesting is when you pick a strawberry out of your garden and you eat it, there's probiotics on that strawberry that help you to digest and assimilate nutrients from strawberry. So if you've never eaten strawberries before, your body doesn't have those. And so it takes time to build up that microbiome.
Right.
So it takes a few weeks or a few months to build up this diverse microbiome that's used to digesting 2,000 plants. And so in that transition, people sometimes feel bloated, sometimes feel gassy. Sometimes they get constipation because they're not drinking enough water. Because when you increase your fiber, you need to increase your water intake.
Right.
So just know that there's a transition. Now, some people, like my friend, she didn't have any negative experiences, only positive ones. She was just like, I can't believe how amazing I feel. She woke up, there was no brain fog. She woke up with more energy. She couldn't believe, it was just like a miracle. It was like this, and her viral load has gone way down. Her EBV has completely gone away. So for her, it was just like this miracle. For me, I did a slow transition, so I didn't really notice, although I did have the gas for about a month, but I knew what it was, so I wasn't going to stop doing it. And if we're all quarantined at home anyway, the gas doesn't really matter.
Well, they've got this thing going around right now. They're calling it COVID-15. And I'm like, what's COVID-15? Apparently, a lot of people are doing comfort eating and they're gaining between 10 and 15 pounds during this quarantine period. And it's like, wow, what a great opportunity for you to go to the flip side and actually start eating healthy and feel better.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it on my run this morning. I have a neighbor that is actually morbidly obese, and she really struggles, and she's always tired. And I thought if she could just feel what she would feel like, I think that would be the real indicator for a lot of people is you have no idea how great you're going to feel when you go plant-based. So. Yeah. So, well, I want to say thank you so much for sharing all this great information. And again, I want to remind people, go to learntruehealth.com. I've been speaking with Ashley James, and she has a fabulous podcast show. We'll put the link below. You need to check it out. And Ashley, it's been delightful having you on the show. In closing, what are your closing thoughts for everybody?
When you say something like that you're going to do new, like let's say you've never walked around the block and you say, I'm going to go for a walk around the block, or I'm going to eat a whole food plant-based diet. When there's something new in front of you and you say, I'm going to, I want you to listen very carefully to all the negative chatter that happens after. So the first thought, is the really positive one. The first thought is, oh, I'm gonna be just like Kathleen and eat a whole food plant-based diet, right? That's the first positive thought. Or I'm gonna start training for marathons, or I'm gonna go ride my bike. So the first, or I'm gonna clean the house, whatever it is, the first positive thought is the good one, right? So hold on to that one. And it's quiet and it's quick. And then really loud it's gonna be all the chatter. It's going to be all of the negative, like, oh, and for me, it was like, well, you can't do that because meat gives you protein, and you can't do that because, you cook for everyone else in the house, and what are they going to think? And and so then it's all like the negative chatter, and then the negative chatter is louder and overbearing, and will try to convince you to not take action. Listen to it and become the fly on the wall, become the observer observing that chatter. That chatter is not you. That chatter is not the truth. There's an esoteric belief that the chatter is the archetype of the devil, and not the devil itself, although, if that's your spiritual belief, but the archetype of the devil, testing your resolve. So, are you going to give in to the test? It is a test of your resolve. Or are you going to rise up and overcome? Because that negative chatter is designed to keep us safe and stuck in life, keep us in the gray zone. Are you going to stay in the gray zone, stuck where you are? Because it's comfortable, because we know what's going to happen, because we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, keep getting what we're getting in life. Or there's this new level that's full of ecstatic joy, but it's uncertain. And so it might be dangerous. It might not be safe because it's uncertain. And so this voice is trying to convince us to stay stuck in life. So are you going to listen to the chatter? Remember, the chatter's louder and it's negative. And we can't do this because XYZ, and it gives you all these reasons. And when you hear that really loud voice trying to convince you to stay stuck in life and not take action, you've got to become the observer and go, oh, that's not me, because I want this new level of ecstatic joy. I want to experience the first voice. The first voice was saying, I'm going to do this cool new thing. I'm going to go and do this amazing, I'm going to do plant-based, or I'm going to train for a marathon. I'm going to go clean the kitchen, whatever you wanted to do. That's the voice you want. Everything else that's trying to convince you, all the reasons. Now, they might sound reasonable, like, oh, you can't do that because meat has protein in it. Like, it sounds so educated, right? And normally we give into that voice because it sounds like the voice of reason. I'm telling you, that's not the voice of reason. That is all, and this voice might come in the form of your mother. It might sound like what your mother told you. Like my mom told me that rice and potatoes and starch is really unhealthy, right? Don't eat starch, it's really unhealthy. So I would say to myself, oh, I can't go whole food plant-based because starch is really unhealthy. And that'd be my mom's voice. And so you might notice that the voices or the naysaying, which we oftentimes will give into because we think that's just us thinking logically. It's not you. If you become the observer, you realize these voices are not you. So don't give in to them. Focus, just say, okay, thank you. I realize you're trying to keep me safe by keeping me stuck in life and keeping me in a place of certainty, which is the gray zone. I'm not buying it because I want to live in ecstatic joy, which is this whole new level. I want to bring myself up to experience new things. And so I'm going to listen to the first voice, which might've been smaller and quick and quiet, but it was the one that was filled with positive. It was the one that gives me a future that I want. So just catch yourself when you're putting out new goals in your life, all that negative chatter, it's not you. Don't give it power, but become the observer and realize it's separate from you.
Perfect.
That's what I needed to be able to take this leap. And I think that there's so many people out there that are, because of the factories, the meat factories were, closed for a while and the meat supply is diminished. People were in fear because they believe they have to have meat. And it's that little voice going, no, we need to eat meat. We need to eat meat because of whatever. And if they took the leap into eating plants, into eating a whole food plant-based diet, they would begin to see how great they feel. They begin to feel this whole new level of energy and vitality. But we have to catch ourselves and not give in to all of the doubts. Right. The limiting thoughts. We have to catch ourselves and ask and make sure that we're not coming from that space.
All righty. Well, I want to thank you so much. And I just so appreciate all the work that you're doing in the world, the way you're educating and raising awareness. And just keep on being your awesome self. And I just look forward to traveling on this journey with you. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.